So now that we have the cart and cart item in our database, we might think of like, how can we test this out? We can create views and do all that stuff for it, or we could do what we did in the last one, which is add our stuff into the admin. The admin's a great way to actually test out a lot of things such as this. So let's try it out in the same fashion that we did with product and variation models by importing from .models. We'll import cart. And of course, I'm in the carts admin here. And then we'll also import cart item. And the first one I'll do is cart item inline. And it's going to be admin.tabular inline. And the model, of course, is cart item. I'll worry about the other things later. And then we'll do class, such as extra. Then we'll do cart admin, admin.modeladmin, inlines equals to the list. Only thing in there would be cart item inline. And then we want to set the model itself in class meta, model equals to cart. And then finally, we want to register this. So admin.site.register cart and cart admin. All right. And of course, the model comes first, and then the cart admin comes second. So let's go ahead and run the server again. But we've got this issue. The server is saying cart item has no foreign key to carts. Okay, so let's go back into our model and kind of rethink on how we want to do this, how we want to associate these two things. Now, if I added cart in here as a foreign key, so let's just go ahead and do that. I'm not going to run the migration yet, but let's say, for instance, we had cart, and if it's declared below, if you remember, we have to use quotes around it. So we could actually use this sort of thing, but I'm going to leave it out for now. And in fact, I might want to change how my ManyToMany field works. I kind of want to have it using variation, but through this model. Like, I mean, I want to have the items being variation items, not cart items, because I'd rather just see the variations themselves and then use this as an intermediate model, like something in the middle that it still goes through, but it's not quite the same. So to do this, I'm going to get rid of items, this original one, and we're going to run migrations here. So we'll do python manage.py, make migrations. So this is going to drop the migration issue itself. We've got this problem because of the admin, so let's comment that out real quick. Make migrations, and it's removed the field items from it. So if I do migrate, it's going to allow me to run this again. Okay, so it's still not associated. So now if I uncomment items again and use variation, I can now do this object of through, and we call the class itself is cart item. So what this is doing now is saying that our items are actually going to be a query set of variations as opposed to a query set of cart items, but it will use cart item itself as the intermediate model. So let's see how we actually do this once we set it up, but I also need to make sure that cart is in here. So I need to make sure that the two items that are being foreign keyed together have to be in here using this through. So through meaning if I wanted to have a cart with cart item and variation, I need to make sure that cart item has the item and variation in there as a foreign key. Now, there are examples of this on Django's documentation too. If you look at the extra fields on ManyToMany relations, you see something like this. This is another way, another area as to where you might find it useful, is using a group and membership. So if you wanted to say, for instance, combine people, like they're in a certain group and you wanted to know more about their membership to that group, this is how it's done. So this is another example that you can work through that's related to what we're about to do as well. But in this case, it's about relating a variation, a set of variations to cart. So a set of product variations to a cart, and it's doing that through this cart item. And this comes more important later once we actually work with the cart items themselves versus the ManyToMany field. All right, so let's go ahead and make the migrations again. So python manage.py, make migrations. And this is going to ask you for a default value for cart, and that's for this cart item part right here. The only reason it's asking you for this is because cart item as a model is already in the database. If it wasn't in the database, it would not ask you for this, as we've seen with other times that we have the cart item being not nullable. So if we want, there's a few ways on how we could do this. We could set a default here, default value or default ID number for a cart for the existing values in the database, which we actually don't have any existing ones, but Django doesn't know that exactly. Instead, it's being careful. Another thing that we could do is add null being true, which I do not recommend because we never want this to be null. So what I'm going to do is just provide a one-off value, which is this right here, for all existing rows. Since there are no existing rows, it's not actually going to do anything. So we're going to select option 1, and then I'm just going to say 1. Press enter, and there we go. So I'll do python manage.py and migrate, and now we see the migrations working, and we now have the proper relations that we want. So since cart has now a foreign key to cart item, we can go back into the admin and adjust this. And let's make sure the server is running. And flip back into Chrome, refresh the admin. Now if we click on carts and we go to add cart, we now see that we have the option for a user, which is fine. And then we have cart items. So I can actually select the variations for the cart item and the quantity that I want in there. So let's say, for instance, I had 16 gig. If I hit save, I now have a cart. The first item in the cart has an item quantity of 1 for the variation. And if I hit quantity of 10, it's also going to be 10. So this is really cool. So this is actually showing us how this cart's going to work to some degree. Now, of course, on the front end side, this doesn't show us anything. So that's something that we still need to build in. But since we've done this, let's actually play around with the shell, the Python shell, to see how we're going to actually add in cart items in the view, or some way of how we're going to do it. All right, so if you have any questions on what we did here, let us know. Otherwise, let's keep going.